Okay, let's dive into photosynthesis. Now, I know you've heard the word before, but what if I told you it is the single most important process for pretty much all life on Earth? Seriously, we're going to break down exactly why it's so critical, how the heck it actually works, and we'll even uncover some mind-blowing evolutionary tricks along the way.
So, why is it such a big deal? Well, for starters, it's about food. I mean, everything you eat, whether it's an apple, a salad, or even a burger from a cow that ate grass, it all traces back to this one process. Photosynthesis is, quite literally, the foundation of the entire planetary food web. And it's not just food. Go ahead, take a deep breath. Right now. That oxygen that just filled your lungs? Yup. That's a gift from photosynthesis. It's the byproduct plants release while making their own food, and it's what makes complex life, like us, even possible. So that's the why, and it's huge, right? But what about the how? How do plants manage to pull off this incredible act of planetary engineering, turning pure sunlight into life itself? Let's get into the mechanics.
So, what is it really? Well, at its very core, photosynthesis is a process where plants take three super simple ingredients to build, well, everything. They grab light from the sun, they pull carbon dioxide right out of the air, and they soak up water through their roots. The best way to think about it is like a recipe. You can see the ingredients on the left: 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 6 molecules of water. Then, with the energy from sunlight, the plant cooks them up into the good stuff on the right: 1 molecule of glucose, that's pure sugar, pure energy, and as that all-important byproduct, 6 molecules of the oxygen we breathe. Now, where does all this magic actually happen? For that, we have to zoom way, way in, deep inside a plant's cells. This little green guy here, that's a chloroplast. You can think of it as a tiny solar-powered factory, just packed with all the machinery it needs to run that chemical recipe we just saw. You know, figuring this all out was this huge scientific detective story that took centuries. Back in the 1770s, Joseph Priestley noticed that plants could somehow fix bad air. Then, Jan Ingenhousz came along and proved they needed sunlight to do it. But the real breakthrough, the game changer, came in the 1930s when Cornelius van Niel figured out that the oxygen plants release comes from splitting water molecules, not from CO2. That changed everything. All right, so let's break this whole thing down into 2 main parts. First up, capturing sunlight. And honestly, the best way to think about this first stage is like charging a giant planetary battery. This whole process gets visualized in what scientists call a Z-scheme just because of its shape. So, follow those yellow arrows. When a photon of light hits, it zaps an electron, boosting it to a super high energy level, kind of like launching a ball high into the air. As that electron then falls back down through this transport system, the plant cleverly captures that energy to make chemical fuel. And look down at the bottom left. To replace those lost electrons, the plant rips apart water molecules, and that right there is the moment that releases all the oxygen into our atmosphere. And here, this is just beautiful. Here's the proof that this is really how it works. The graph on the left shows which colors of light chlorophyll actually absorbs. See those massive peaks in the blue and red parts of the spectrum? Okay, now look at the graph on the right. It shows when photosynthesis is most active. The peaks are in the exact same spots. It's the smoking gun, proving that plants are using that blue and red light to power this whole engine. So, at the end of this whole first stage, what has the plant made? Well, it's produced 2 key energy molecules: ATP, which is like the cell's tiny rechargeable battery, and NEDPH, which is like a delivery truck for high-energy electrons. And of course, it's released that crucial byproduct, oxygen. The planetary battery is now officially fully charged. Okay, the battery is charged. Now it's time for part 2, making the sugar. This is where the plant gets down to the real construction work, literally building life right out of thin air. And this whole assembly line is called the Calvin cycle. See at the top where that CO2 from the atmosphere enters the loop? The cycle cashes in the energy from the ATP and NEDPH we just made, our charged battery, to grab that carbon and step by step builds it into sugar, which you can see exiting down at the bottom. It's so elegant. It really all happens in 3 main steps. First, carboxylation. This amazing enzyme called rubisco, which, by the way, is probably the most abundant protein on Earth, it grabs a CO2 molecule from the air. Second, reduction. All that energy from our battery is used to convert that carbon into sugar. And third, regeneration. The assembly line resets itself so it's ready for the next CO2 molecule to come along. Okay, so that's the standard model. That's how most plants do it. But, nature is always tinkering, always innovating. So let's look at a fascinating evolutionary workaround. Think of it as a clever software upgrade for photosynthesis, especially for plants living in tough conditions. See, there's a problem. That star enzyme, rubisco, it has a flaw. When it gets hot and dry, it sometimes gets confused. And instead of grabbing a carbon dioxide molecule, it accidentally grabs an oxygen molecule. This is called photorespiration, and it's basically a wasteful glitch that makes the plant lose precious energy. And this glitch is what led to the evolution of a totally new strategy, what we see in so-called C4 plants. This table just lays it out perfectly. While your standard C3 plants like rice and wheat, they really suffer from this photorespiration problem, C4 plants like corn and sugarcane have evolved a way to pretty much eliminate it. This makes them way more efficient, especially in hot, dry climates. And their secret weapon is this really special leaf structure called Cran's anatomy. See how it has two different rings of cells? The outer cells act like a bouncer at a club. They grab the CO2 first, then they actively pump it into those protected inner cells. This creates a super concentrated chamber of CO2 right around rubisco, basically forcing it to do its job correctly and not make that wasteful mistake of grabbing oxygen. It's a brilliant biological pump. But even this incredible process has its limits. Over 100 years ago, a scientist named F. Blackman basically pointed out that for any process, you're only as fast as your slowest part. The rate is always determined by whatever ingredient is in the shortest supply. For photosynthesis, that bottleneck could be sunlight, it could be water, or it could be carbon dioxide.
And that leaves us with a massive, critical question for our time. For most of Earth's history, CO2 has been the limiting factor for plants. But now, for the first time, we're flooding the atmosphere with it, removing that limit. So the question is, how will the planet's green engine respond? Will the world's plants go into overdrive and help balance things out? Or will they just hit a new wall, limited by other factors like heat and water in a rapidly changing climate? We are, right now, running a global experiment to find out. And the future of our food and the very air we breathe hangs on the answer.